I know it seems odd that there wasn't a special puzzle break in your book to solve what was on the planetarium ceiling, but it says to keep reading to solve this particular puzzle. Winston explained the answer to his friends. One of the phrases floating up there on the theater ceiling had been water carrier. The sign of the water carrier is Aquarius. Water carrier was missing its second letter. If you took the second letter out of the word Aquarius, that gave you the letter Q. You had to do that for each word. Bull was missing its third letter. Winston took the third letter, U, from the constellation named Taurus, and so on. So I'll show you a picture of what it looks like when Winston was solving this. So when he finished, he had the word quasar, Q-U-A-S-A-R. That was recognizably a word, but none of the boys knew exactly what it meant. Winston thought he might have heard the word on a science fiction television show, which only made sense, seeing as the puzzle was in the planetarium. Mr. Garvey tried explaining it, eyebrows scrunching as if he wasn't at all sure himself. It's an object in outer space, he said. Something extremely bright and very far away. It's one of those things astronomers are always looking for with those gigantic telescopes. Whatever else a quasar might be, it was definitely the answer to the puzzle. It had to be. But there was still a tense moment until Jake confirmed the answer with the mini computer. Then there were high fives all around, even with Mr. Garvey. They rushed out to the parking lot. Jake glanced under each tire before getting into the car. Mr. Garvey barked at him to stop dawdling, but Winston knew he was looking for more signs of sabotage. "What's the next step?" said Mr. Garvey when they were settled. Jake studied the computer. "Sutherland Farms. Sounds familiar. Where is it?" "West Meadow. I have directions." "All right," said Mr. Garvey, "we're off." They drove along and Jake read directions off the computer screen in a low and distant monotone. Winston suspected he was still upset about the trick they played on the girls. It was all Mr. Garvey's doing, of course, but the girls wouldn't know that, and even if they never saw the girls again after this was over, they would return home convinced that all of them, not just Mr. Garvey, but all of them, were underhanded and scheming, full of smiles when needing a little help, but also willing to stab a friend in the back for a few seconds' worth of advantage. The girls would say to their friends, "Some of the people we met today were just awful," and they would be referring in part to Jake. And the fact was, Jake would never cheat. Never. If Winston was playing Monopoly with his sister Katie and had to leave the room, he would take all his money with him. If he didn't, his stack would be lighter when he returned. Katie was a good kid and a good sister, but the temptation to take a few $100s or slip an extra house onto Pennsylvania Avenue was, for her, too much to resist. Jake would resist. Winston could stop the game, take a bicycle ride around the neighborhood, come back to find the board and his bank account exactly as he had left it. Jake was competitive, in fact very competitive, but he was what Winston's dad called the right kind of competitive. If he won, he wanted to know he had earned it from start to finish, fair and square. And Mal? He might give himself 5 hotels on Boardwalk or rob the bank entirely so that Winston would return to see his friend sitting behind a huge pile of money and a big fat grin. That wasn't cheating. It was just being Mal. Winston understood why Jake was upset, but Winston wasn't entirely sure that their teacher had cheated. He had played a trick, certainly, offered to help another team and snatched that help away. It was bad sportsmanship. But was it cheating? Winston couldn't quite pin that label on it. Not when somebody else out there had given them a flat tire with a broken bottle. Now that was cheating. And now he realized something else. Something so obvious he didn't know how he missed it. Whoever wedged that bottle under their tire had also moved the signs at the Space Museum. The signs were supposed to have been in front of the planetarium doors, guiding the teams inside, but someone, surely the cheater, had moved the signs to that small, dark hallway. First the flat tire, then the disappearing signs. Someone was trying to knock them out of the race and doing a fine job of it. Was there a way to figure out who it was? He could rule out the girls from Greater Oaks right off. They wouldn't move the signs then pretend they couldn't find the puzzle. The point of cheating is to slow down everybody else, but not your own team. That left 8 other teams. Could he eliminate any others? Could he eliminate all but one? Maybe it wasn't a cheating team. The cheater could be flying solo. His or her teammates might not even know what was happening. Winston could almost see it. The cheater sees the sign in front of the planetarium and gets the idea to move them. His team settles into the theater, looks up at the fake starry sky and those floating words. The cheater says he has to go to the bathroom and leaves. He moves the signs and comes back to help solve the puzzle. Easy. Well, maybe not easy. The cheater had to drag those signs a good 50 feet without being spotted by any staff. But somehow he had accomplished this, just in time for Winston's team to arrive and to be thrown off track. The cheater sure had luck on his side. Something in that thought shined out at him like a quarter on a sidewalk. There was a clue here to the identity of the cheater, but Winston couldn't quite get a handle on it. We were the last ones there, he muttered. Mal had been tapping a rhythm on the car window and now turned to him. What, Winston? Winston didn't even know he'd said anything out loud. He said, I'm trying to figure out who's cheating. That sounds like a plan. The cheater's team got to the planetarium before we did, right? Jake said, everybody got to the planetarium before we did. Okay. The cheater also arrived at the factory after we did. Winston expected cheers or gasps at this revelation, but instead, all he got was a thoughtful and puzzled silence. Mal finally said, How do you figure? Winston sat forward. We pulled into the parking lot and went inside. Sometime after that, the cheater's team arrived. Before they came inside, the cheater put a bottle under our tire. Jake said, Why did it have to be then and not when we were all rushing back to our cars? Mr. Garvey chimed in. That would have been incredibly risky, doing it with so many people around. Winston, I think you might be right. But let me ask you this. How did the cheater know which cars were involved in the contest? Not every car in the visitor lot belonged to a team. Mel said, Maybe they pulled in just after we did. The cheater saw a grown-up and 3 kids. Not hard to figure out why we were there. Jake twisted around in his seat and said, Who came into the conference room immediately after us? Whoever it was, I bet that's our cheater. Well, maybe, Mr. Garvey said. All right, maybe, Jake said grudgingly. But who was it? Who came in after we did? They all thought about it. Those private school kids, Mal said. The ones dressed like waiters in a fancy restaurant? Are you sure? Yeah, I remember thinking they were somebody official, like that game was about to start. How soon after did they get there? I don't know, I didn't have a stopwatch, Mel said. Who else arrived after we did? Winston asked. Silence. All right, turn it around. Who was in the conference room when we got there? We can rule out those teams. Maybe, Mr. Garvey said again. That Brendan Root kid was there, said Mel. Girls were there, said Winston. Oh, you noticed the girls, didn't you? Mal teased. Winston turned red. The other math teacher was there, Jake said. Your friend, Mr. Denham. Mr. Garvey said, He is not my friend. There were other teams there too, said Mel, but I can't think of who they were. So I guess right now we think the cheater is on that private school team, right? Okay, that's enough, said Mr. Garvey. You have no idea one way or the other. We're not going to accuse anybody of cheating unless we catch them in the act. I'm not 100% certain that anybody is cheating at all. Go ahead and discuss this all you want, but I'm drawing the line at accusing anybody. Even here in the car. I don't want to hear I think so-and-so is the cheater. I don't want to hear it, all right? The boys mumbled agreement. Let's just see what happens next, said Mr. Garvey. The name Sutherland Farms meant nothing to Winston, but as soon as they pulled into the dusty parking lot, he realized he'd been here before. The farm had a petting zoo, which he visited back in first or second grade, and he was pretty sure his parents had come out here to buy vegetables and pies. The air was filled with a thick, earthy smell, like you could plant a seed right there in the parking lot, and it would blossom before your eyes. Winston got out of the car and looked around. The sun was really beating down now. Where to, do you think? Jake asked, shielding his eyes. There, look, Winston said and pointed. Another feature was a maze, giant bales of hay stacked 5 high, creating very effective walls. Today there was a sign at the entrance, closed for private event. Next to that stood an advertisement for Simon's Potato Squares. There was no question where the puzzle was this time around. That's what I like to see, said Mal. Let's go. They reached the maze entrance, and Winston could hear the shrieks of kids running around. An oddish fellow with a significant belly came over to see if they should be allowed to enter. They showed him the mini-computer, and the man walked away. A maze, said Mr. Garvey doubtfully. Isn't the answer supposed to be a word? How is a romp through a maze going to lead to an answer word? Winston said. Maybe it's hidden somewhere. Maybe they hand you the answer when you find the exit. Well, there's only one way to find out, Mal said, taking a step forward. Shall we? Mr. Garvey raised a hand. Let's just think for a moment. What's the fastest way of doing this? Maybe we should all take different routes. That way one of us will find the answer. Jake said. If Winston's waiting by the car with the answer and I'm still wandering around with the computer, it won't help. You're right, Mr. Garvey said. Bad idea. We stay together. Let's go and keep your eyes sharp. The entrance was blocked by an elaborate curtain of corn husks. They parted this and immediately came to a sign bearing a single handwritten letter. T. Well, that's probably important, said Mal. All right, said Mr. Garvey. Look out for more letters. He headed off in a random direction. The 3 boys rushed to catch up. Hay dust floated around like snow in a snow globe. It felt like the air itself was made out of bits of straw. It was impossible to walk around the maze without a great big sneeze welling up in the back of your head. No one was talking about it, but everyone on the team knew this was their opportunity to catch up. If they could burn through the maze quickly, if the other team stumbled into a lot of dead ends, then Winston's team might gain back several minutes lost to that flat tire and the time spent wandering around the planetarium. By the time they reached their 4th dead end, however, it no longer looked like they were going to solve this quickly. And with each new dead end, Mr. Garvey became a little bit more intense. He was no longer interested in any opinions his kids might have. In fact, it was all Winston could do to just keep up. At one point, Mr. Garvey rounded a corner, saw it was a dead end, and wheeled around again so quickly that Jake slammed into him. Jake, watch where you're going, Mr. Garvey said angrily. This is hard enough without you getting under my feet. He stormed off in a new direction. The boys glanced at each other with irritation, then ran to follow him. This was anything but fun. There were definitely other kids in the maze. Winston could hear them, but they encountered only one team face to face, the kids from Demilla Academy, who were the closest thing right now to suspects in their cheating mystery. They ran into the Demilla team no less than 3 times. The first time there were nods of acknowledgement, but no words. The second time there was some laughter. "Huh, you again?" said the boy on their team with a friendly smirk. The third time, nobody was laughing. Winston was fed up with the maze, but the DeMella kids looked utterly exhausted and at the end of their rope. The boy had loosened his necktie and untucked his shirt from his pants. The girl's long hair had grown limp and heavy with sweat. They looked like they would rather be anywhere else on earth. At this point, it was clear that the two teams were heading in the same direction, so they informally joined up. Mr. Garvey, rather tired himself after going full throttle for so long, slowed down so he could talk to the DeMilla teacher. The two girls fell to the back of the group while they complained to each other, hissing like peevish old cats. The boy introduced himself to Winston and his friends as Michael Scott. Winston said, "I've never heard of your school. Where is it?" "Over in North Hendricks. It's a private school, quite exclusive." He said that part not like he was bragging, but like he was making fun of people who brag about things like that. Mel said with some interest, "Are you rich?" Michael shrugged. "Pretty much." This too he said as if being rich was simply a fact of life. "My dad owns a real estate company. Big bucks." "What's with the outfit?" Jake asked. Michael rolled his eyes. "School uniforms. We have to wear these every day, if you can believe it." "Yeah, but you're not in school." "Doesn't matter. As long as we're representing the school, we have to wear our uniforms. That's what Mr. Meyer says." Michael jerked his head backward, indicating his teacher. "Your football team must be something to see," said Mel. Michael gave a snort of laughter. If Mr. Meyer was the football coach, they really would have to play in these business suits. The other team could tackle us by yanking our ties. They shared a good laugh. Could this kid really be the cheater? Well, anything was possible, but Michael seemed all right, a genuine good guy. And he said now in a low voice, "Any other teacher would have let us wear jeans like normal kids. Mr. Meyer was not my first choice for a teacher to take us around on this today." "I know the feeling," Winston said. They walked in silence for a couple minutes, and Winston occasionally was jotting down or erasing letters as they continued through the labyrinth. None of the DeMilla kids were writing anything down. Winston guessed Michael was keeping track of the letters in his head. And then they astounded themselves by coming across the maze's exit. For a moment, none of them could believe it. Winston had grown used to the idea that they would be wandering around for the rest of the day. Delighted, they stepped out into a wide field, a disorienting and wonderful feeling after so much time spent closed up by hay bale walls. "Finally," Jake said. He pumped both arms in the air like a victorious boxer. "I'm never doing one of these things again," he said to one of the DeMilla girls. "Not for $1,000,000, said the other. "Unless there's another one later today," Mal said, and the girls looked at him in horror. So, in your booklets is a picture of the maze that they went to and where they found the different words. Take some time and see if you could find the letters they would have encountered, and if you think you know the word they should put in their computer. Come back when you think you have a thought.